Hello and welcome to the Fat Boss Guide to the Spoils of Pandaria 10-man normal in the Siege of Orgrimmar.
Hello.
And this fight is really different from most other fights. It's not one big boss that you're going after. Instead, you're splitting up into two groups and clearing out some rooms in a warehouse. Like doing a bit of spring cleaning for Garrosh, I suppose. It's a bit odd.
Yeah, it's a strange encounter, but it's challenging either way, and it's pretty fun.
It's good.
So as Alex said, the objective of this encounter is to clear 4 quadrants of a warehouse by killing mobs that are inside crates. Every time you kill the mobs, you'll see sort of like an energy bar on your screen that will go up. Once it reaches to 50, you can move on to the next room. And you do this twice, and then that's it. You've completed the encounter. However, if you fail to clear the rooms within the set time limit that's right at the top of your screen, the rooms will explode and everyone will die.
Yep, there's a big explosion. Goodbye, everyone.
So yeah, that's what you've got to try and beat. It's against the clock, basically.
Now for this fight, you want to bring 2 tanks, 2 healers, and to be honest, cleave DPS and AoE, like multi-dotters and all that sort of stuff is the best because there are a lot of ads. So of course, if you can cleave them down while doing ridiculously high damage, that's really good.
Now, even though there is 4 rooms, we'll call them quadrants, just to make it a little bit more clear, there's actually only 2 different types of mobs, like 2 sets of mobs. There's Mogu mobs and Mantid mobs. Now, there are 2 quadrants on each side of the encounter area, just under the bridge where you started, before you actually decided to start the encounter. Now, so you can make the enrage timer on this encounter, you need to split up into 2 groups to cover 2 quadrants of the warehouse each.
So on the left and the right hand side, you'll need to send 1 tank, 1 healer and 3 DPS. So it's pretty much like a 5-man group that you'll be sending down in each different zone. That's the reason you don't want to bring 3 healers, because otherwise, well, you can't send half a healer down in either space, and you won't probably meet the enrage timer on towards patch week, so you do need to bring 3 DPS on each side.
Now, both sides will have different sets of mobs to deal with in the first quadrant. However, the second quadrant will be different to the first. So on the left side, you'll have Mantid first, whereas on the right side, you'll have Mogu. And then it will change respectively once you reach the second quadrant. So it is very important that you know how both sets of mobs work before you decide which side you're going down.
Now in each quadrant there are 4 different types of crates in which the mobs live, and we're going to talk about every single different crate individually for both Mogu and the Mantid quarters, and what mobs can spawn from them and how you have to deal with them.
Now to start off, we're going to talk about the lightweight crates. These are the most common ones and they're pretty much dotted around everywhere. And within these you'll find 3 different types of mobs for both Mogu and Mantid.
Now the first ad we're going to talk about for the Mogu side is the Stone Mogu. Now these are like the lowest of the low priorities. They deal very little damage. All they do is cast Hardened Flesh, and that applies a dot to you that slows your movement by 30% and it stacks. You can dispel it and you can interrupt their cast of it. So it's like nothing, just get a dispel every now and then. They also cast Earthen Shard, and this, you do need to interrupt this because it does do quite a little bit of damage to the target, so really you just need to do interrupts, and you need to, you can stun them and stuff like that, so just clear them all out. It's like nothing at all.
Now also within the lightweight crates for Mogu is the Burial Urn. Now these urns will spawn sparks that will just travel randomly around the room. These sparks will pulse AoE damage in like a 4-yard radius, so it's important that you do not stand on top of them. And also when these sparks do die, they'll explode for about 150k in an 8-yard radius. So when the Burial Urn does become active, it's very important that you kill this as quick as you possibly can, because the sparks do come in very frequently, and if the room is filled up with them, everyone's just going to die from AoE damage. If there's very little sparks up, just cleave and dot them down. They're not prio number 1, they're only prio number 1 when there's too many up.
Now the third and last type of ad that you can get from these lightweight crates on the Mogu side is Quillen Guardians. Now they spawn in a group of 4 per crate, and all they do is stack a rend on the tank. You just need to cleave them down. Yeah, they're very low priority.
They're more or less irrelevant. Just cleave them down.
So pretty much for the Mogu side, for lightweight crates, Burial Urns are number 1 priority, and then you just need to interrupt and cleave down everything else. It's like nothing at all.
Now for the Mantid side, you'll have Korthik Warcallers. Now these do very low damage and are not that important at all. However, they do have an enrage ability that makes them deal 200% more damage and also stack a 20% armor debuff on the tank. So when these do enrage, you can actually dispel the enrage using trank shots and stuff like that. But really you should just nuke them down, just cleave them down. They haven't got a lot of health, and really they're not a massive problem.
Now the second type of ad we're going to talk about is the Amber Encased Kunchong. What the fuck? And this sends out a trail of pheromones to a random target that will turn into a puddle under your feet once it reaches you. So pretty much when it does reach you, just move out of it. Don't stand in it.
Yeah, don't stand in the puddle. And these mobs don't move around. They're completely solid. Just kill them, AoE them down, try and cleave on top of them. Pretty simple. And the last possible mob that you can get inside one of these lightweight crates for the Mantid side is the bombers. Now, these will spawn tornadoes that deal high nature damage, and the tornadoes do last for a full 25 seconds.
And they're fucking going everywhere as well.
It's a real pain in the arse. You really do need to make sure that you do avoid the tornadoes, and really you need to nuke these bombers. If they're up, just nuke them, get them out of the way. They don't have a lot of health. Pretty easy to deal with.
So overall for the Mantid, you've got the Korthik Warcallers, which you need to de-enrage them, the Kunchongs, which you just need to move out of their shit that they send at you, and you just need to nuke the bombers because of all the tornadoes. Now the second type we're going to talk about is the Stout Crate, and now these can only have two different types of mod for both Mogu and for Mantid. And the first one we're going to talk about on Mogu side is the Anima Golems.
Now, Anima Golems are a very high priority target because they do quite a lot of irritating abilities. Their most annoying ability is Matter Scramble. Now, this will spawn 2 red beams, and if players do not stand inside this beam, a couple of seconds later it will explode and deal 300k damage to all players in the quadrant, and the beams will immediately respawn again. So what you need to do, you need to get one player to stand in one beam and one player to stand in another beam. The players will then swap locations, like Matter Swap on the Dark Animus encounter, and no damage will be taken by anyone. Now these golems will also create small like purple voids on the ground that heals any mobs inside it for 10% of their maximum health per second. Don't tank shit inside it, move it. Very, very easy, very, very simple.
And the second type of mob is the Mogu Shadow Ritualist, and these are also very high priority because they have got a ability called Torment. Now this is a nasty dot that increases in damage over time, so the quicker you can dispel it the better. And when you do dispel it, what will happen is that it will jump to another target. However, the damage, as it does get higher over time, if you dispel it and it jumps to another target, the damage like increase is reset as well. So the more you dispel it, as more as it jumps around, it will just keep resetting back to the low damage it does at the beginning of its dot.
The debuff will only ever disappear once the Ritualist itself is dead, so that's why it's so important to kill these very, very quickly, because healers don't really want to be spending that GCD every 8 seconds or whatever it is to dispel. It's a bit of a pain, so just kill these nice and quick.
Now on the Mantid side, there are also, of course, 2 different types of mobs. The first of which we're going to talk about is the Zarthic Amber Priest, and once again, these are also very high priority. You really do need to take these down. Not only do they hit very hard, but they also spawn Mantid Swarm adds. Now what you need to do, of course, as a tank, just pick them up and cleave them down.
Now the Amber Priest will also buff all mobs that are nearby with Residue. This is a magical buff that heals every 3 seconds. It's like a hot, and the hot is split between all targets that are affected by the buff itself. So if it's on a lot of targets, it's not actually a big deal, but if it's on one target, then it's very, very important that you use an offensive dispel like Purge just to get rid of it. But generally, Amber Priests, the main problem with them is just they hit so hard. They hit the tank very, very hard, so kill them as quick as you possibly can. And the last Mantid mob that you can potentially have inside a Stout Crate is one of the Wind Wielders. Now these will do an ability called Windstorm that will create spinning tornadoes that deal huge amounts of damage, and these tornadoes go absolutely everywhere, so make sure you do avoid the tornadoes, and they last for around 18 seconds. However, these mobs also have a buff that they'll place on all mobs, very much like the Residue one. However, this one is just a flat 50% damage increase.
Yeah.
So this one is far more important than the healing one. Make sure you get rid of this, because otherwise your tank's going to go splat. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Massive Crates, and these only have one type of mob in them. And these are sort of like the mini bosses of the encounter, and you'll have 2 crates per quadrant. Now to start off, we're going to talk about the Mogu quadrant, and in this one you'll get 1 out of a possible 4 Shao 10 Elder Council. Now all of the mobs that you can get out of them are exactly the same. They all do the exact same ability apart from one pulsing AoE ability that they have. However, it does the exact same amount of damage except it's either fire, frost, poison or whatever.
Wind, I don't know.
All that sort of shit. They're exactly the same though. All you need to do is just out heal it. The main thing that these guys do is spawn stone statues. Now these stone statues don't really have like an aggro table, and they'll just sort of wander around and try and like land a slam on people. They're very similar to like the stone statues from the Golden Lotus dailies.
Yeah.
Just don't stand in the slam, don't stand in like the epicenter shockwave markings on the ground.
Now one thing to note about these statues, that the more statues there are, the more damage the council mob mini-boss will do, and this increases by 10% per statue. So you can't just leave these statues and let them wander around and slam you about. You do need to kill them very quickly, because otherwise that pulsing AoE they're doing is going to be doing a huge amount of damage to like your little 5-man group, and it's just far too much to heal out, really.
But apart from that, that's all that guy does. Very, very simple. Now, as for the Mantid Quarter, you'll get a Mantid Commander. Now, these guys will debuff raid members with something called Set to Blow. After 15 seconds, 4 bombs will detonate, dealing 200k damage to everyone within 9 yards of the person who has the debuff. However, this debuff you can actually drop. You have an extra action button, and every time you hit it, it will drop one of these bombs on the ground.
Now the bombs themselves will actually remain active when you put them on the ground, and they will have the same effects as if you hadn't dropped them at all, except they're just on the floor. The thing is now that they will only detonate when a player walks over them. Now they will despawn after 30 seconds, and all you need to do when you do have the debuff on you is fuck off out of the middle of the room and just place them in the corner. Just spam your extra action button, just leave them all over the ground, and then come back. Because if you start like placing them in the middle of the room, like there's nowhere to move really, and there is quite a lot of movement involved while you're inside the room, so you can like get to places and all the tornadoes and all that kind of shit. So just put everything in this corner, spam your button, then come back and deal damage to the boss again.
One thing to note about the commander is that he also has like a mild 30k damage aura that is quadrant ride. Like it's just like little pulsing AoE. You can barely notice it, to be honest. Just out heal it, no big deal. So they're all the different types of mobs that you'll have per like quadrant out of all the different types of crates. However, there is one particular type of crate that is shared and is in every single quadrant, regardless if it's Mantid or Mogu.
Now these are the crates of Pandarian relics. Now all of them have like a little green paw, like clawy sort of symbol on top, and there's 3 different types of mobs. The first of which is the Ancient Brewmaster Spirit.
Now the Ancient Brewmaster Spirit will like do a keg toss that just hurts a random target. It will like throw it towards that target. You can actually avoid this, but you don't really need to panic avoid it. Like, it's not really a big deal. It does very low damage when it hits you, but the main thing it does, it will apply a 50% slow on you for 15 seconds. Now it can be removed by using things like Freedom, like Blessing of Freedom, so do use that. I think some speed increases will also remove it completely, but we didn't actually manage to test that, but that's something that you might want to try out yourselves. Now the main ability that the Brewmaster will do is Breath of Fire. Now this will channel like a Breath of Fire ability on the tank, dealing 250k damage over 6 seconds. However, if someone takes damage from this breath while under the keg debuff, you'll be disoriented for 6 seconds and you also take 50k ticking damage. So it's very, very important when you are tanking this mob that you do face it from away from the raid, and if you're affected by this keg debuff, don't be stood anywhere near the front of the mob.
Now when this mob dies, it will drop an orb that anyone in the whole room can click on. Now once it has been clicked on, it will buff the tank, so even if the DPS click on it, the tank will still get the buff. Now the buff it will give him a chance to deal 415k damage to enemies that he's attacking, and it also stun them for 1.5 seconds. Now this bypasses any stun immunity all the mobs have, so you can't actually stun any of the mobs, but this will actually make it so you can stun them. And this has a 15-second internal cooldown, so it won't be proccing all the bloody time. But
either way, it's nice.
A ridiculous buff you can get.
Yeah, it's a nice damage buff. Another mob that you can get inside these crates is the Wise Mistweaver Spirit. Now this mob has like a passive lifesteal effect. All damage she deals will also heal her for 150% of the amount. So it's not really a big deal, to be honest, because she doesn't do a hell lot of damage. But if you want to be really anal about killing her very, very quickly, tanks use cooldowns. That's the best way to do it. However, she also has another ability called Gusting Crane Kick. This will start to draw players towards her as she sort of spins around on the spot. If you're stood in melee range while this is going on, you'll start taking ticking physical damage, and it does hurt a lot, so it's very, very important that you keep away from her. And obviously, because of the passive lifesteal thing, any damage you do take will heal her, so keep away from her while she's spinning. Now when this mob dies, it will also drop the exact same orb. However, once you have clicked on it, it will buff the healer in the quadrant. The buff will give you a passive ability that gives your heals a chance to send out a tidal wave directly in front of your character's position. A very, very important thing to know about this, it's not your camera position, it's your actual character's position.
Yeah.
If your camera's completely still forward, but you're strafing left to right, it will send out the tidal wave to the left or the right.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important when you do have this, try and stand still for as long as possible, because this tidal wave, not only will it heal any friendly players that are like hit by this wave for quite a large amount, but the wave will also damage an enemy for around 400k, and it hits all enemies.
Yeah.
It's a massive amount of damage. And this only has an 8-second internal cooldown, so this is like the best one really, because not only does it deal damage, it will also heal people.
Now the last type of Pandaren relic guy that you can get is the Nameless Windwalker Spirit. Now this does an ability called Path of Blossoms that will charge a random target, leaving behind a lovely trail of lovely little roses, some blossoms on the floor for you. Now if you touch the blossoms, you actually start taking large fire damage. They were
Yeah.
evil blossoms all along, Lawrence. So the initial target of the charge will also be stunned as well as any other target within 3 yards. So make sure you are spread 3 yards. It's not very far
And
to
you
be
can
spread.
dispel that target as well.
Yeah, you can dispel the stun. Now, when the mob dies, it drops the same, like another one of the orbs. When clicked on it, it will buff all the DPS in the quadrant with a passive ability that will make it so they do 100k damage to your current target. And this is a 5-second internal cooldown.
Yeah,
so
it's a bit shit.
It's a bit
actually.
wank, to
It's
be
nowhere
honest.
near as good as the healing one.
But yeah, it's still good.
One thing to note about all these buffs you get from all these mobs is that they do last 3 minutes. Now that's all the mobs that you'll ever see in this encounter.
There's quite a lot of mobs,
There's
Lawrence,
quite a lot of
just
mobs.
to open a box. I
Just to
don't
open a
want to
box.
open the box anymore.
But now we're going to get down to talking about the tactics and how you should be doing this encounter.
Now, as we said before at the beginning of this video, each one of the rooms will be completed once you reach the 50 energy mark. Now, the thing is, if you kill all the mobs in the room, you open every single crate and kill every single mob, not only will you probably be incredibly close to the timer in which the room will explode, you also have gained far too much energy.
Yeah, you've done too much. You only need to do the minimum amount in order to move on towards the next room. At the end of the day, you want to finish the encounter as quick as possible.
The amount of energy from each mob that you get from the little crate, so say you do hit the little crate and the mobs or mob spawns out, when you kill that you'll only get 1 energy. Now, killing an ad that spawned inside one of the stout crates, the medium sized crates, will give you 4 energy, and the mini boss crates that you kill, they'll give you 14 energy. Now the buff crates, they don't actually give you any energy at all.
Now, we actually did this lots of different ways. However, the best way we found, or at least the safest way of doing it, is killing absolutely every single crate in the room except one massive one. That'll actually give you enough to clear the whole place. That means you'll only ever do one massive one, which is one of the bosses. So either one of the bomb guys or one of the ticking AoE stone guard people.
Yeah.
So to start off, the first thing we did when we entered a room is immediately get out 2 Pandaren people. If you're struggling and like for some reason your tank's dying with tanking 2, really they shouldn't, but if they are, only do 1 at a time and just open like a couple of little ones just to cleave them down. But immediately open 2 of them, get both your buffs, and then immediately start working on the boss. Now on the boss, it's a good idea to use Bloodlust. However, if you're in your second room, then obviously you don't have your Bloodlust, just use other cooldowns. But try and save your 3 minutes just for the boss, because the quicker the boss dies, the easier it is. And after that boss is dead, you immediately want to just go around the room and kill everything else. And you can do this at your own pace, but you do need to keep in mind that you are on a timer, and you need to, you need to do it at some sort of pace. Ultimately, the best person to open the crates is the tank, because he'll know how much damage he can take. If he's doing his job, he'll understand, right, I'm not taking any fucking damage right now, I'm going to go open 4 little ones or 5 little ones. And as well, it does matter what DPS you've got. If your DPS is very low, then you want to try and keep the boxes to a minimum, because otherwise you'll get too many abilities going off. If your DPS is very, very high, then you can quite easily open loads of boxes, and all the ads will die before they manage to get any abilities out. So although it sounds quite vague, there's no real guideline we can give you. You kind of have to work that one out yourself. But just every single room, kill the 2 Pandaren relics, kill the mini-boss, and then open every single crate apart from the last massive one.
Yeah, well the thing is as well when you're actually doing the rooms is that when you are opening all the crates, if you are like spam opening them, that's not always the wisest idea, because you do want to know what's actually spawned out of it. Say you got horrible RNG in the Mogu room and you opened like 6 little boxes and each one was a burial urn. I don't even know if that's possible, but say it did happen. Look how many sparks there'll be. So
Yeah.
you do want to like take into account what mobs are actually coming out so you can deal with them.
And fundamentally, that's why it's so important that you understand the mechanics of every single mob, because then you can tell, right, that one's a pain in the arse, we can't deal with him and all these guys at the same time. So you need to, it's very, very important that you understand how they all work. But essentially, you just clear a room, when the bar reaches full, you hit the lever, the other side needs to do the exact same. Once both levers have been hit, you'll move over into the next room, rinse and repeat, hit both levers, and that's the end of the encounter.
Yeah, you get to open the box in the end. Hooray! And you get some loots, which is wonderful. So thank you guys for watching. If this guide did help you out, then please do give us a like. It will help us out a lot. And make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe.
And if you'd like to see more 10-man normal guides on the Siege of Orgrimmar by Fatboss TV, please do click upon the annotations you see on your screen now, and that will take you straight to those videos.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.